Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are setting up a new avatar tank down here in the fish room. Now I've already gotten started, so let me catch you up a little bit. So after adding that substrate that came from the two experiment tanks on the other side of the room, we had to do a bunch of water changes. So essentially did a drain fill on this thing for a good amount of time, probably 30-45 minutes, and we got the tank all nice and clear. You can see we mounded up a bunch more substrate in the back here to get this more illusion of depth, right? So a little bit in the front, a lot more in the back. It helps to create that, and we sort of have this path in between the hair grass that we were able to salvage. So maybe we'll kind of shape that into something that looks cool. I tried to save as much of this hair grass as possible. You'll see that there's a bunch of bubbles on there. That's just because the water's cold from the hose, right? But we got a lot of the algae out of this, not 100% of it. You can still see a little bit of it down there at the substrate. We're just gonna kind of go with this. We have a bunch of new plants to fill this in and make it look a lot better. I don't really like this patch, like it's too consistent. We're gonna make it kind of look more like this with our new plants, but before we do any of that, we need to start on the hardscape. So down here we have the remnants of old avatar tanks still down here. So this is pumice. If you guys are familiar with my videos and have seen my other avatar videos, then you know why we use the pumice. It's basically because it is going to be pretty close to neutrally buoyant, so we can hang things when we eventually super glue these to the main stones. There isn't a lot of stress on the structure, and it does pretty good long term. But because we're doing that, we do need to have some big heavy rocks that are going to be our anchors, and so we're probably going to use some lava rock. I have a few pieces down here, and I have a lot more somewhere else. We'll have to go find those. Okay guys, so this did turn into a 2-day affair, hence why I have a different shirt on. But we are still finishing up this hardscape. We have a few more pieces of our floating rocks that we need to super glue together and then put in place here. But I want to check out the plants real quick, and then we'll dive into planting it. So hopefully we can time this all and be ready to go. For those of you guys that are new, you might be wondering about the super glue, why we're using it in the tank. Is it bad? Totally safe, used it a million times. It's a pretty popular thing to do to hold things in place. So I like to use the gel type Gorilla Glue super glue. I think that it works the best, especially when you're fixing rocks and things like wood to rocks. But you can use pretty much any type of super glue. Let's slide our plant box over here and take a closer look, guys. All the plants that we have are from UNS. You'll see their logo on here. This is a pack of, let's see, dwarf hair grass, some type of grass. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And hopefully the rest of these plants look good. The tissue cultures I'm not worried about. They can, be in packaging for a long time. But of course, you know me, I got super busy, and these have been here for like 4 or 5 days. So, what do we have here? We skipped these. I think this is more, this is hydrocodal. So we have some 4-leaf clover plants. We also have some different types of buces. So this looks like it's apple leaf. So kind of a smaller, more oval shaped leaf. We have quite a few different moss type plants. So we got some physodins. We have a bunch of mini bobitis, baby leaf bobitis. I think that's the same thing. So I think I got like 10 or 15 pots of this. I think that's going to look really good in this tank. And I also got some new Java Fern. So this is the Trident Mini Java Fern. So we'll use some in our Avatar tank today. If not, you know, we have a lot of other tanks where we can make use of that. There's some more of the Mini Bulbitis. More of the Java Ferns. This is looking like more hair grass. A few more mini tridents. There's a theme here. This is looking like Boost Godzilla. So a little bit of a narrower, different shaped leaf. And let's start getting into here. Ooh, I like what I see down there. We'll get to it. We have some Pogostamon Helferi in the pots. Some of that looks like it probably could have gotten out of the bag, you know, right when it arrived. Hopefully that's not all toast. And then we have the big boy. So we have like 1 kilogram of Christmas moss. I believe, yeah, that was Christmas Ross, right? Yep. So this is going to be going in a lot of different tanks, but that's a lot of moss. Never bought that much before. And then here we have some more dwarf hair grass. Okay, don't ask why we had to do that. This Christmas moss, though, looks pretty dang good, man. Like, you're always gonna get a little bit of brown in there. The only time I've seen it where it looks super perfectly green is in tissue culture, but as you know, tissue cultures can be expensive, and if you need that much moss, which, I mean, come on, let's be real, we always need this much moss, guys. This is just the way to buy it. So this is where we landed with the hardscape, guys. We have a lot of floating structures in this Avatar tank compared to previous ones, and they were not very easy to decorate. So there's this long kind of protruding area here. It is propped up by this stick that is super glued in the back there. That proved to be necessary just because there's so much weight over here. Of course, once we fill the tank with water, there won't be so much stress, and we probably don't need that stick, so we could remove it, but then when we're doing water changes, every time we do a water change, we need to support this side. Likewise, you can see this curved stick. That one will actually be taken out because there is that stick in the back that is strong enough to support this. As long as the water level doesn't drop completely underneath it and for too long, I think it'll be okay. Not completely done with adding twigs and stuff around the rock structures. I want to do a little bit more of that, but as we plant. But before we plant, there's one thing I want to do. I want to get down here and remove the filter and clean it out, because this thing has been set up for forever, like over a year. We haven't opened this thing up or done anything to it, and I think we would benefit from doing that. It needs to get a little unclogged. So here's a little time lapse of me opening up this Awaza canister filter. This, I believe, is a Filto Smart 300. If I could go back in time, I probably would have a Biomaster on this thing, just because those filters, they are a little bit bigger, they have more capacity, but they're also a little bit easier to access. We don't have to actually open up the filter to get to the first part of the mechanical filter media that typically gets clogged up first. So while this is a little inconvenient, I really only have to do it ever, maybe once a year if I even want to, or if, you know, for whatever reason something gets clogged up more. It could just be the tank's fault for that happening. So So with that filter clean job, we didn't completely clean it out. So we left the biological material, the ceramic rings that we had in there, totally alone. And we didn't even get to the bottom sponge at the bottom of the filter because it was positioned in a way that was holding the ceramic rings in place. Long story, we didn't do a complete cleaning on it. So what is eventually going to happen is when we kick on that filter, once we get the tank done, it's going to blow a ton of crap everywhere. So while it's not the best way to do what I just did, cleaning your filter and doing whatever you can to increase your flow rate is going to be important, even if you're disrupting things a little bit. And we'll work on that once we get to that point. We're not quite done. There's still a little bit of planting to do, but let's kick on this filter and let's see how crazy this thing is going to get. We'll let it go through its bubbly phase here before it really kicks on. So far, it's not too bad. You can see there's a little bit of discoloration. Not what I was expecting, though. I was expecting it to be just huge plumes of stuff, but we'll give it a second. There we go. It's still kind of working itself out here, but we'll get all the air out of this thing. I was really hoping that it would be a little bit more dramatic and it would basically be a lesson in, beware of cleaning your filter halfway, but as you can tell, we got a little lucky, I guess. Didn't have that dirty of a filter, I guess. And this is something I typically wouldn't do under this kind of a circumstance, but because the water's already going to be murky and we did mess with our filter, I'm going to pour in some Fritz Turbo Start just to get that cycle going. Like I said, not really that necessary because this is established substrate and materials down here where there is plenty of good bacteria, and it's not like we completely sterilized our filter or anything. So this is just an over precaution, and we got it, so why not? If we were going out and grabbing fish tomorrow, which we probably won't do, but if we were, that would be something that would help us be able to rest easy that our fish are going to be okay. And because we just made this tank super murky, I'm going to wait until tomorrow to put the plants in. So you're going to see it right now, but it's another day of waiting for me. This project has turned into a 3, maybe even a 4-day event at this point. It's going to take a few days for it to totally clear up, and then of course get all of the little bits and pieces of moss that are floating up in the corners of the tank. This is a little bit of a messy ordeal, so it does take a little bit of extra time to get it the way you want it. But I'm happy with it. I think we got a nice balance of things up above, the floating rocks, relative to the other stuff in the aquascape. I'm not sure I really love the Java fern in here, but I think once the moss really greens up and turns less brown, then it'll really come together. Really crossing my fingers on the mini bulbitis. I've tried it before, didn't have the best luck with it. If those end up dying off, we can always try and replace them and tweak things, or we could just select a different plant. we'll have to be patient and let the hair grass do its thing. I know it looks a little weird right now just because we have a nice carpet of it here and then these little patches of it, but we got to be patient. I think that's the moral of the story. I do want to be straight up with you though, guys. A scape like this is not meant to be a super long-term thing. So there's certainly things you can do to help promote that and have the best odds of having something look like this for as long as possible. But in my experience, doing a scape like this with the moss, having to fight the growth of those plants and then having to trim and kind of keep that balance, it's tough. So a scape like this probably will have a rise and a peak, and then it will start to come down. And hopefully you can keep that peak in the 2 to 3 month range of it looking really, really good. Then it's going to come down to either probably having to replace the moss because it grows too much and you just can't keep it under control, and going from there. So just to be completely straight up with you, you know, a lot of these aquascapes that I make aren't super long term, and I know that not everybody's into that. So just keep that in mind. We're back out at the tank, guys. It is probably like 4 days after the setup, and things are a lot more clear. The tank is doing pretty good. I put in a handful of Siamese algae eaters from the tank next door. You probably can't see them. These ones are really skittish for some reason. There's one right in the middle. They won't be the only fish that we put in this tank. I'm still kind of coming up with some ideas. If you have some good ones, let me know down in the comments, okay? And with that, I mean, I think this is pretty much done. I have a little bit of loose Bucephalandra down there that I pulled out of the tank that it was in, and I'm probably going to tuck them in there somewhere. Got to figure that out. I think the only thing that I didn't mention is that we are running CO2 on this tank, so we have our little diffuser down there, and you know, this isn't a tank that probably requires it, right? We have mostly slow growing, kind of lower light stuff, but the CO2 in my experience always helps. Okay, it's just always something that I put in the tanks that I care about, and I obviously care about this one, so we're gonna do that. It's just gonna take time for this to polish up, so as we ride that up into its peak that we just talked about, you know, we'll get out of having to look at moss that's brown and little patches where you can see the super glue. It should only be, you know, 3 or 4 weeks before that is a thing of the past, and this thing is cruising into its looking good phase. We'll keep our fingers crossed. No algae yet. You know, you typically 4 or 5 days in, you'll start to see what kind of algae is going to plague you, but we haven't seen it yet. Hopefully the algae eaters can help keep the string algae out. I could ramble on and on about stuff, so I think I'm just gonna not do that this time. Thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully we can get to working on this tank in the next video. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.